Welcome to the TufFish Show. I am so excited to bring to you Namaine Coombs. Namaine, I am so glad you are here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Would you please start by sharing how did you get into writing?
It's a funny story. Actually, I feel like writing found me. So I was one of those kids that grew up, as really an independent adult. My parents are immigrants from Jamaica, trying to establish their way in the US, work hard, work on education, things of that nature. So I was kind of, the adult in my family helping, babysit my siblings, really learning about life, on my own, whether I was playing basketball on the basketball courts among my friends or even in school. And so through life, you're figuring out stuff, trial and error. And one of the things that I've always attached myself to were approval and achievements. That's kind of our culture in terms of really trying to succeed here in America. With my parents coming from Jamaica and seeing all the opportunities here that are in America, they really instilled those values within us. And I tend to internalize things and really strive through my life. And if you look at my successes on paper, everything looks glorious, right? Great job, great wife, awesome car, fancy house, and really giving that illusion that everything is great. And I attached my happiness to various different achievements, difficult goals. I ran the Boston Marathon,
Oh my gosh.
I ran the Boston Marathon, always proving things to myself. And I got this job, wonderful job now, where I was traveling the country on stage, speaking to financial advisors for investment firm. And I was traveling 3 to 4 times a week, spending a lot of time on the road. And when you're there in the airport or in hotel rooms, you have a lot of time to think. And as I started going through, really presenting this powerful presentation, speaking authentically, things like that to my audiences, and realizing how they connect to me very differently than how other people speak, it forced me to look inward. And I was a person that internalized a lot of things in my life, whether it's stress or that I put on myself or just being a victim, this didn't happen because of this, or, blaming other people. And it really put me in a state of depression, actually, when I hit 40. And I started looking at my life a little differently and questioning everything. I was always a secure and confident person, and now I'm questioning my worth. And I took this wonderful trip to Belize. I usually spend the holidays with my parents, my family, but this holiday season, I was going to go to Belize and just kind of unplug, decompress, de-stress. And out there, I had an amazing time. I've never traveled by myself internationally. And I went out there and just kind of let life happen. And on Christmas Day, I did all these excursions, cave tubing, climbed the Mayan ruins, things such as that, and really began to discover myself, if you will. And through the trip, I would meet various different people traveling with themselves, by themselves, or with family, and end up in these conversations as if somebody was trying to tell me something. So all these gaps that I saw in my life, they knew nothing about me, but they would bring up some topic or some conversation that actually, I didn't realize till probably months later the significance of a lot of those conversations. And it was all bringing me to a certain point. I always say everything happens for a reason, nothing is by accident. And so when I got back to here in Charlotte, I just really started really looking, at my life a lot deeper. And through that time period, I started doing some research because I never believed that people could change. And I felt like it's a time for me to change. And so I started doing all this research on the subconscious mind and conscious mind and understanding the limbic system, which is responsible for your emotional and behavioral responses, flight or flight. And the more I dug into that, the more I started realizing how people tick and why people move the way they do, and how your developmental beliefs that start from 7 to 10 years of age, end up being your foundational beliefs. And so if they're flawed or invalid, it kind of changes how you think. And so as I started doing some research and started reading a lot of self-help books, like The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle was a great one. That was my read in Belize, with mindfulness. I started getting this awareness of myself. And as I started gaining this awareness, I wanted to learn more. And I started doing practices like meditation, journaling, things like that. And what I noticed as I was going through this journey, I would meet people or come across, even my friends where they have certain issues or certain things they're presenting scenarios. And I'm just speaking basically, off the top of my head, but it has the background of kind of my research that I did. And they're hanging on to every word I'm saying. And so over time, I just felt like I need to do something with this, this is powerful, and so I was going to do vlogs, I was going to go on YouTube and, walk around with a camera and do this life vlog in different scenarios, like maybe do a video on ego, maybe one on decluttering your life, things like that. So, I went and bought all this equipment for my iPhone 6 that was going to be my camera, and set it up, and put a mic on it and started recording this trailer. And as I was recording it, I was like, I need to write some of this down. And so I pulled down the tripod, the mic, the phone, and I told my buddy, I said, I'm gonna go to Best Buy and buy me a laptop. And I bought me a laptop, came home, and 50,000 words later, I had a book.
I love it. 50,000 words later. You've shared a few
50,000.
nuggets in there that I think are really important to touch on, and that is the one of which was your point about an attachment to approval or to achievement. And that's definitely something I'm sure can resonate with so many listeners, because, some, even if you've written said book and it's published, then, can you get attached to the reviews one way or the other kind of thing, or the achievement of that, or so I've reached this, I did a great job with this first book, and then the pressure's on for the second book, or what have you. So there's attachment pieces that you talked about that I could see a correlation in, just in other ways too. And the research that you did, although it was one that was also helping you, it helped to go into your book. And the third, which is, I call it the breadcrumbs kind of an idea, where everything happens for a reason, but these little things that kind of happen, and they kind of are leading you piece by piece. Like the analogy I think of is in Monsters, Inc., where when Boo has met Mike and Sully, and then the two monsters are like, we got to move her. How are we going to move her? And instead of giving her the whole box of Cheerios, they give her one Cheerio at a time and lure her around the corner. And then when they get her where they want her to be in the little chair, then they give her the box and she's eating the Cheerios. But if we got it all at once, if we had the box of Cheerios all at once, it might feel like, what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to start? This is overwhelming. But one piece, one nugget, one inspiration, one thing that happened that you can make that connection to, helps you get to that bigger place, to get you to that next level. So tell me about, so when you were working on unleashing these 50,000 words, did they flow so easily, or was it something that you worked in phases, and stages, if you will, or was it something that you were able to just sit down and it flowed so easily that it was like, wow, this first draft happened without too much effort, really?
Yeah, I wish I could say it happened without too much effort, but honestly, it wasn't even like it was an intention to write the book. It was more about personal reflection. The way the book is structured, each chapter has kind of a personal story that is framed around some topic. So I like using ego because it matters a lot to me. The first story is kind of, or one of the stories in the book is about ego. So I write kind of about ego. And then I talk about the research behind ego, kind of how our brain ticks, the two sides of ego, things of that, and how to neutralize that. Then I give step-by-step guidance on how to respond to situations instead of react, based on ego, kind of putting winning or losing aside, but focusing on the solution. And so it was really almost a reflection of my journey, that I went through, where I looked at all these various things in my life as I became more aware, and really looking to replace what I considered limiting beliefs. I was successful. So a lot of people say, what limitations do you have? But each one of us has these I would say, limitations to our imagination, based on what we were taught, our influences, our experiences in life, and things of that such. So be able to almost bring down those borders and realize, hey, I have unlimited possibilities. And that really played through in the book. And it was almost as if, just like that Belize trip, it was almost as if with writing a book, each step presented itself. And so, like, in terms of what the first step, the next step, as I would tell my family or my parents that I was writing a book, it was like, I told them, they're like, oh, great. But in a way, I almost felt like there was disbelief, like, really, while I was doing it. And, I was just really focused on writing the book for me. What would be the perfect self-help book that could have led me to this point, in terms of really focusing on my life, certain aspects of my life, and figuring out what can I be doing better, even if it's a successful part of your life. Why is it successful? So within the book, the underlying theme is really understanding kind of what your intention is, and making it about intentional success. If you're going to do something, are you doing it for you or defined by you in terms of how you define success? Or is it by a measure of success that defined by somebody else's opinion or expectation? And so as I went through the book, I just kind of took that lens. Okay, if I broke down my life in all these different categories, what could I change to that to give my life more purpose, more meaning? Not only to myself, to contribute to myself, but to contribute to society at large on a grander scale. And so I, did a lot of research on book writing, so I was watching a lot of videos in terms of structure, organization, outline, but I didn't want to, again, limit myself, right? Put myself in a box. And so I almost started writing it almost like a journal, with the personal stories first, and then going back and then following that up with the research. Okay, if you knew nothing other than this experience that you had, but you didn't know why certain things happened a certain way, or you had a certain thought, what would you like to know about that would help you kind of understand the meaning behind the experience that you had? And then, okay, if you were telling somebody, the average Joe, how they can, incorporate something in their life that will change their life, how would you lay that out? And what's so interesting, and like I mentioned, the next step presents itself. There's a young lady by the name of Melody Groats who wrote my foreword in the book. And she just quit her job, and she wanted to be a public speaker around domestic violence. She's a domestic violence survivor. And so while I was on the road for my investment firm, I'm on stage with a lot of speakers that are brought in to motivate the crowd. And I've always said, you know what? They're not talking about anything that's rocket science. I can do that. And so when I found out Melody was, working on becoming the speaker, I met up with her, and I had asked her, I was like, hey, have you ever heard about accountability partners? I'm interested in learning more about your speaking, and, maybe you can bounce things off of me, as you're going through your journey to become a speaker. And she was like, yeah, let me think about that. And so the next time we met up, she was telling me about this class that she was taking. And she had the book sitting in front of her. And I'm sitting here looking through this book. And I'm like, this is a lot of stuff that I'm talking about in my book. And what it was is she was taking a life coaching course. And so I was just like, wow, I'm writing this book. I'm doing this research. What better way to really, kind of put the icing on the cake and bring it all together by taking this life coaching course with Melody. And so the class already started. I think they were in their second class. And I asked if she thought the instructor would mind if I, joined. And she said, I don't know. So she connected me with the instructor. Instructor said, you know what? You can catch up on that first class, but I would love to have you. And I mean, as I was taking that class and writing the book at the same time, there was so much integration. I learned so much about the hero's journey and the different steps. And I started understanding my journey. And as I started understanding my journey, I was able to really gel everything together that I was writing in the book. It was like different components, right? The story, the education piece, and the guidance, but now making it flow to where in the book, I'm asking powerful questions as if a coach would, where the reader goes through the book and has the opportunity to reflect on their life as they're reading the book. And we have sections in the back where they can take notes, so has this situation happened to you? How did it make you feel? What do you plan to change going forward? What habits do you plan to adopt, to change your life? So it's
I
really an
love
amazing
that.
experience.
Yeah, I love that you've made the book something that is, I'm going to, like, it's truly a resource and it's a growth opportunity. So I am the person who, if this book is really like instrumental in some way, dog ear the pages, highlight in it, write in it, because that to me is a form of love. I realize it might sound sacrilegious to some readers, but to me, it really does show love, because this book is impactful and you're working it, you're really applying it and using it. And this type of book, the way you have constructed this and asked these questions, means that even if you've reached a certain point that you realize there was some growth, you have applied that growth, you can still come back to that same section, that same set of questions, because you're at a new level, which means to move to the next level, you need to dig even a bit deeper to be able to unpack that and to be able to move, to rise again, to keep moving forward. So I have heard several people tell me before. So I, as a developmental editor, I work with people to help them get that book out. And so many times I hear, who am I to write this book? Who do I think I am? How is my story going to be different? There's so many other whatever out there, whatever the genre is, whatever the topic is, there are other books out there just like that. Who am I to write this book? Now, what I tell them is, there are other books, but there's only one you, and only one you with your experience and your personality and your gifts and talents and strengths. And you can do this. It is your story to share if it's come through you. But I would really love for you to share your perspective, please. What would you encourage that person if that's how they're feeling?
Yeah. And, I had that struggle as well, right? How transparent do I want to be, because you're really putting yourself out there to be judged. And, my advice would be, that first draft, just be as raw as you can, and regardless of who you think is going to read. And the thing with any book is, I think we all go into it with this idea of we have to sell books. And then so we're thinking we need to appeal to the masses, but you don't. There's going to be the right reader is going to read your book. You're the right writer, for that particular reader. And so, you shouldn't be shy about sharing, because once you get to the developmental editor stage, you'll have help, so instead of wearing multiple hats, just be a writer, just write, and be very authentic and transparent in your writing, and bring in all those various different areas to light. You're the artist. I always think about the pages is your canvas, and as you write, that is the paintbrush that's going to bring things together. And so, I would say, rough it out, just put emotion on the pages, put your feelings, and that's what's going to connect to your reader. I mean, like you said, there's a dozen books out there, millions of books out there, and they don't resonate with everybody. So what would make your book special is somebody connecting to you, your story, your personal story. And the way they're going to relate is just based on them. I always say there's no such thing as reality. It's just perceived reality. So based on their perceptions and your perceptions that you've gained through your life, that's what's going to connect and create value.
I so love that. Thank you so much. So your book, I love how the title has unleash in it, but tell me the title, talk to me about the book, and especially how you come up with titles.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one is near and dear to me. And I guess one, because it's my first, but just the title, it took me a lot to get here. So the title is Unleash Intentional Success, Change Your Mindset, Change Your Actions, Change Your Life.
Love it.
The
I love it.
original title.
It feels good when you say it.
It does. It does. And it's just right. It plays through everything. And it's almost like I feel like I've started a movement. Everything is unleashed. I got unleashed t-shirts, a coffee mug, everything. But it's what it stands for, and before I'll talk about that, the title of the manuscript was actually, you can have whatever you want. Change your mindset, change your actions, change your success. And when I gave it to my developmental editor, she was like, well, you can have whatever you want. It's very broad. I don't understand it till I get down to the subtitle. And I was like, well, you have your opinion, I have mine. I'm keeping that. And that's my limited belief, right? And so, I had to really practice what I preach, just even to get to the right title. And so I challenged myself, say, hey, here's somebody that's been in the industry, you're just writing this first draft. Just give it the opportunity to find something better. And we went through various different iterations, and I came up with Unleash, and I had various different titles having that. And what I noticed was, as I was changing titles, from the very first point that I used Unleash, I never changed that. I just changed everything after that. And so no matter what, it had that. And the reason why Unleash was so important to me, because I felt like that's me. That's what I'm doing. It's like I was connected, like, again, attachments versus connections, and so what I'm doing is unleashing myself from, my core beliefs that kind of held me back, limited my growth, my personal growth, limited my opportunities in life, limited me in defining my purpose and in being able to inspire others. So I'm unleashing myself from that to be free, to be authentically and transparently free, to deliver my highest value as intended. And that's what's happening today. And I cannot tell you how I feel like I have far less than before, but I'm so rich in everything else.
That is amazing. That is truly amazing. Now, I would love for you to talk a little bit about working with that editor. So, for instance, when you got feedback because in some cases, the editor is giving you feedback because this is when they're reading it, this is what they're seeing, or this is another perspective. And obviously, when you've found the right person, you trust them. They have your back, they have your best interest at heart, and they're genuinely wanting you to be successful. But that doesn't mean that you have to take every single thing that they say, because it is still your story and your message. So how did you delineate between when to say, you know what, I need to be more open to this, or what can I do with this feedback, versus I appreciate it, but I need to decline this one because I really need to tell the story in this way versus what you're suggesting. Would you talk a little about that?
Yeah, I think anytime you have conversations where you may be on opposite sides, it's always good to kind of take a step back, and decide what is it that's leading to the conflict. Is it self? Maybe you're attached to some thought or something you wrote. So for instance, in the book, my editor, the very first chapter, I thought I had this wonderful story about the subconscious mind, sitting at an airport, because, I used to travel a lot, and I would sit there with my headphones, and we all do it. You'll see people walk by and you create stories in your head about these people, where they're going, where they came from, whether they're a couple or not, or, things like that. And the story was about, they were reflections of me. These stories that I'm creating about other people are some belief somewhere inside of me that I'm attaching to them, even though it may have nothing to do with them or be even correct. And she was like, that's a great story. You need a better one for your introduction. I was like, I thought that was a fabulous story. So I took a step back and I was just like, okay, she again knows what she's doing in this space. And, let's work on the rest of the book and come back to that story, because I still wasn't even sure I wanted to change it. I really felt like I put my heart in that. It was my first story in the manuscript. I feel like, I know the first chapter has to capture attention. I felt like I put my all into it. And so we worked through the rest of the book, and it was like a negotiation, right? She gave me her opinions, maybe refine this or tell me about this, things like that. And what I liked about her approach, she was not necessarily telling, but asking questions to guide me in a certain direction. And so I appreciated that, because it meant that at the end of the day, I was owning whatever ended up on the page, but yet, it's with her guidance that's getting me there. And the more I learned about life coaching, it was the same way. It's not necessarily about resolving or providing a solution. It's about guiding somebody to the solution, which is what I felt like she did. So I was being coached in, a life coaching book. As it's how it turned out. But it's just taking a step back and looking at it from an objective standpoint. Okay, what is the intent of the chapter or the paragraph or this sentence? What am I trying to convey? And just detaching self, in terms of whether you think it should be a different way. Let what would resonate with the reader based on the premise of what you created this to be. And so throughout the book, that was the approach that I took. And that very first chapter, I revisited much later in the process. And I kept telling my friends, gosh, I don't know what I'm gonna write. And I kept staring at this blinking cursor, for about 3 weeks straight, just trying to figure out what can this story be? Because, I have a gazillion other chapters and I've already talked about so many different things. What could this be? And for whatever reason, I decided to ask my mother what time I was born. And it led into this long conversation that ended up being like the perfect story for what the chapter was about. And so, yeah, I told about that part and I told about kind of what it led to. And my editor said, okay, take all this out, but this is great. So I was like, okay, we compromised, we're good. But it's a very powerful, end up being a much more powerful story than what I had in there initially. And so it was a lesson to me, as I go through life that, hey, take the time to figure out, the meaning behind everything, why somebody thinks a certain thing when they come, so you have a better understanding of where they're coming from, as well as understanding your why. Why are you thinking the way that you're thinking? A lot of people don't do that. They just think, oh, well, what you think is silly, so I'm moving on. I know more. But if you take that time to have that awareness in terms of why somebody thinks a certain way or believes a certain way, and then evaluate yours, why do you think a certain way? What are your values? And then do your thoughts and actions align with those values? So as you're writing, your thoughts on the page, do they align with how you perceive it being received?
I love that. And I love that you wrote the first draft, journal style, basically just you becoming comfortable with what you were writing, what you were telling, writing it for you. And then as you developed further with what you wanted to do and built the book along, you involved help and you were open to receiving it and then figuring out that dance of what that meant, but still coming back to saying, this is what I'm trying to do, and trusting that the person that you worked with had your back to get there. And I'm so excited for you. So please, Namaine, would you please, you've just been such a joy. Thank you so much. Would you please share with our listeners where they can connect with you? Where can they get this amazing Unleash book? And I would love for them to know more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So various different ways you can connect with me. Instagram, any one of the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter. I'm definitely on there. Namaine Coombs is my handle on all, so I'm easy to find. My book is available on NamaineCoombs.com. So definitely check out my website, even to learn more about me. There's various different things on there. I think right now I just have it as a book page, but I have a page that's going to be launched, I guess, probably this week or early next week, that includes stuff about my coaching. I'll probably be doing videos and podcasts to come. So definitely look for that. And then in terms of retailers, the book is available in barnesandnoble.com as well as amazon.com.
Awesome. Namaine, thank you so much. It's just been such a joy to have you. It's been so much fun.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me. And I look forward to, witnessing your journey in greatness. And thanks for having me on this show.
Oh, thank you.